enclosed a very remarkable letter concerning the late cruel usage of a poor old woman in Bedfordshire who was suspected of being a witch.
If you've ever considered throwing an old woman into a river to see if she floated, you might be from 1737.
Witches were serious business back in the day. In this article from 1737, we're given the account of a woman accused of and tried for witchcraft in the village of Oakley in Bedfordshire County, UK.
First, a little history. In 1542, the UK Parliament passed the Witchcraft Act, which defined the practice and made it a crime punishable by death. Except for its repeal 5 years later, and then restoration in 1562, the law stood until 1736, 1 year before the incident we're about to get into. And of course, they could abolish the act, but they couldn't abolish the belief or fear in witches, as you're about to see.
You will see by it that the late law for abolishing the act against witches has not abolished the credulity of the country people. Sir, the people here are so prejudiced in the belief of witches that you would think yourself in Lapland, was you to hear their ridiculous stories. There's not a neighborhood but has 2 or 3.
For reference, Lapland in Finland was known at the time as a place of sorcerers and witchcraft.
An old woman of about 60 years of age had long lain under the imputation of witchcraft, who, being willing to clear herself, consented to be ducked. The place appointed for the operation was in the river Ouse by a mill. There were, I believe, 500 spectators.
Things had gotten so bad for this woman that she consented for the sake and safety of her own children. The earliest we're aware of this practice is the 9th century in Western Europe, at which point Christianity decides to pick it up. And even though there's nothing canonical about it, they decide to share it with the rest of the class. So, awesome. And the logic behind ducking someone may seem nonsensical to you and I, but to them, it made perfect sense. It was supposed to provoke God's direct intervention into determining someone's guilt or innocence. So why was floating the sign of guilt? Wouldn't God want to save the innocent? Why should the innocent be the ones to sink? The logic was this: that witches, by their dealings with the devil, had refused the benefits of baptism. Therefore, water being an important part of baptism, would not accept a witch.
The woman came and was tied up in a wet sheet, all but her face and hands. Her toes were tied close together, as were also her thumbs, and her hands tied to the small of her legs. They fastened a rope about her middle and then pulled off her cap to search for pins, for their notion is, if they have but one pin about them, they won't sink.
They throw the old woman into the water, tied up like an animal. Her head is underwater the whole time, but her body isn't going down, and the crowd starts going nuts. They start screaming accusations. Then after about a minute and a half, they drag her out, let her catch her breath, then toss her back in again, 2 more times, and she floats each time,
which was a plain demonstration of guilt to the ignorant multitude. The poor creature was laid down upon the grass, speechless and almost dead. They were so far from showing her any pity or compassion. Such is the dire effect of popular prejudice.
Keep in mind this is an excerpt from a letter that one man wrote of the incident, who actually ends up confronting the mob on behalf of this woman and putting his own life at risk.
I stood against the torrent, and when I had cut the strings which tied her, had her carried back to the mill, and endeavored to convince the people of the uncertainty of the experiment, but all to no purpose, for I was very near being mobbed.
Eventually, someone in the crowd has another suggestion to test the woman, which is to weigh her against a Bible. So, our hero seconds the motion immediately.
If she was a witch, she certainly dealt with the devil, and as the Bible is undoubtedly the word of God, it must weigh more than all the works of the devil.
The woman is weighed against the Bible, and what do you know? She weighs more than the book, which was apparently 12 pounds.
This convinced some and staggered others, but the parson of the parish, who believed through thick and thin, went away fully assured that she was a witch, and endeavored to inculcate that belief into all others. What a hunt.
And now you may be thinking to yourself, well, this was in 1730-something. And the world has moved on since then.
This town full of witches. You better look in my eyeballs. We ain't afraid of you, you stinking witch. You spell-casting, pharmakia, devil-worshipping mongrel, you. Some of you been sick because you befriended that witch.
Some people haven't moved on, but let's get back into the story.
She was found innocent, but just because we can say things could have been worse doesn't mean that the story has a happy ending. The 60-year-old woman was still terrorized and tortured, and who knows what this parson continued to do after the fact, trying to turn people against her. Unfortunately, we don't have the name of the woman or the name of the gentleman who recorded this incident. But the Bedfordshire County Records website does have a list of all the vicars in Oakley dating back to around 1230. So we do have some suspects, Robert Richards or Robert Stokes. The location of the trial, also based on information gathered from the Bedfordshire County website, was located on the north bank of the River Ouse, a little west of the Oakley Bridge. What started this whole thing in the first place? Your guess is as good as mine. Older women were frequently accused. Perhaps she was a healer. Perhaps she hadn't had enough children in her lifetime. An infertile womb, cursed by the devil, could be cause for accusations. Or maybe she had neighbors who were having infertility problems, in which case they blamed her. Too much money, too little money, someone had a bad dream. Anything goes. The story isn't the happiest one in my files, but it is an interesting insight into the mental leaps required to get people to a place where they're drowning an old woman to protect themselves from perceived supernatural dangers. Now that is all I have for this one. I wish I could dive into it more, but I'm not really a psychologist, and I am quite taxed mentally. So I appreciate you stopping by. Come again. Peace.